If things are not working, it is your job to find a solution.
And this afternoon was again the prime example. He hasn't been good enough. He can say anything he wants in his press conference after.
Yes, I thought Brighton could actually win this game before the ball was kicked, but I didn't think Brighton would win it in a canter without being at their best. And the one guy I feel sorry for more than MD is Bruno Fernandes.
Rebound himself, open net, 3-1 Brighton.
4 defeats in his last 5 Old Trafford games for Ruben Amorim. Those faces on the bench said everything. As for the table, 13th for Manchester United after Brighton take a 3rd straight Old Trafford win. Let's get word from Ruben Amorim speaking after today's game.
In 10 games in Premier League we won 2. I know that. Imagine what is this for a fan of Manchester United. Imagine what is this for me. So we are getting a new coach that is losing more than the last coach. I have full knowledge of that. Like I said, I'm not going to change no matter what. And I know we can succeed, but we need to survive this moment because I'm not naive. And I know that we need to survive now. So we are being the worst team maybe in history of Manchester United. I know that you want headlines, but I'm saying that because we have to acknowledge that and to change that. So here we go, your headlines.
Here's a look at Manchester United struggles to continue. 6 home league losses this season. It's most through 12 home league games since the 1800s. 22 points and 10 losses this Premier League season. Both are its worst through 22 games in the Premier League era. 0 open play shots on goal in a home Premier League game for the first time since January of 2016. We're welcoming in Julian Laurent now to talk more about this, but let me start with you, Stevie, with your latest reaction to what we've seen today from Manchester United.
Well, the only surprise is that Brighton weren't at their best, because I think everybody knew that this would be a tough game for Manchester United. Nobody was convinced about the 2 results they got previously against Arsenal and Liverpool. And it turned out that Brighton were not as good as they normally are, but yet they still come away with a comfortable 3-1 victory. I mean, they scored early on, that always helps. But at least Manchester United, after they went behind on the first goal, there was a reaction. OK, they never managed to get any shots on target, but they got a penalty, but there was some sort of reaction. So at half-time, you know, I think it was probably the right scoreline. But the second half, a bang average Brighton, because Brighton were worse in the second half than they were in the first half, but got the 2 goals. Obviously, Onana has a complete and utter howler for the 3rd, but there was no reaction this time. And so, yes, I thought Brighton could actually win this game before the ball was kicked, but I didn't think Brighton would win it in a canter without being at their best. I mean, this performance from Man United, particularly the second half, if I was being kind, I would say they were bang average, but they weren't that good. I mean, it was just awful and no reaction at all. And the one guy I feel sorry for more than MD is Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes is trying everything to try and get his team going, and he can't do it on his own. And I don't know where the next win's coming for Manchester United. I just don't know.
How did you see it, Jules?
Yeah, I agree with everything Stevie said. I thought the second half, was one of the lowest. I mean, it was a new low I felt for them, because we said already on Thursday night, I wish we could replay the show on Thursday when we talked about the game tonight after they miraculously beat Southampton after being by far second best on that game for 82 minutes before Amad Diallo transformed himself into Jesus Christ and scored 3 goals out of nothing, pretty much. That's what happened. And we said on the show on Thursday night, we said Brighton could go there and spank them like they've been spanked at home by Bournemouth and Wolves and Forest and all those teams that they've lost to since Amorim arrived. And we've also said, and this afternoon was again the prime example, he hasn't been good enough. He can say anything he wants in his press conference after, because he knows that by saying something big like we are the worst team in Manchester United history, which kind of deflect a little bit from how bad he has been and how bad the team has been. But this is not working anymore. This might work in Portugal. That doesn't work here anymore. We know your bluff. We know what you're saying. This was not good enough. And by the way, learn about the club's history, because there have been far worse teams than the one that you're coaching right now. It's a team that has cost more than £500 million. It's a team full of international players. I do not care the way you want to see this team and the recruitment and how it was constructed. This is a squad full of international players. This is a better squad than most in the Premier League. And this is where you are. This is what you do. You can give me every headlines you want. You haven't been good enough.
Do you see it as a deflection, Stevie, him saying we're the worst right now, and Ruben Amorim telling it like it is in the press conference? Do you see that?
Yeah, 100% agree with Jules. 100%. He's trying to get in before they get it out, which is what he's doing. No question. I'm 100% with Jules. He is trying to take the sting out of the situation of how bad they are by saying they're really bad. It's almost like he's looking for a bit of sympathy. It's almost like he's looking for a get out that it's not his problem. That's what it feels like.
It's trying to control the narrative and the rhetoric, and let me be the one that drives the narrative. Let me be the one that provides you material. And here's the thing, you could be providing material if your team were playing well. Hey, that's the best way to control every narrative, and that's just not happening. I think what concerns me about Ruben Amorim and Manchester United is the fact that it's been a consistent struggle. We know that full well. Jules just mentioned some of the results there and the run of bad results that they have had. And then a manager comes into a press conference and says, well, I'm not going to change anything. I am who I am. I'm going to do things my way. And that, see, I have a problem conceptually with that, fundamentally with that. If things are not working, it is your job to find a solution. And if that means changes things around, that is part of the description of your job. Now, if I was critical about Pep Guardiola and the struggles of Manchester City because he refused to change the way they're going to play, let me just tell you something, just in case anybody needed some clarification. Pep Guardiola has a lot more equity and a whole lot more money in the bank when it comes to success at the club level than Ruben Amorim does. And so, if we were criticizing Pep Guardiola for not being adaptable enough, it's only fair to say, Ruben, maybe, just maybe, things are not working. Perhaps the plan that you want to put in place eventually will work. But until you get to that point, hey, there's nothing wrong with winning some games, even if it means playing ugly. Build confidence, build momentum, build credibility, and then you can start establishing what is it that you want to do when you have the pieces that you think you're capable of having at some point. But I don't know that you can just sit there and accept that, you know what, this is just the way it's going to be. If you're a fan of Manchester United, do you sit back and say, yeah, Ruben, I like this. I enjoy watching this. I like the fact that we've accepted that we're terrible and we're going to continue to be terrible. Come on now. It's not a manager's position to just accept failure and say that that's okay.
I don't know whether Amorim was a player or not. But as a player, when you're getting the results and the performances that Manchester United are and have been since he got there, as a player, there comes a cut-off point where you don't believe in what you're doing because you're so bad. There comes a point where, as a player, you go, why are we continuing to play this way? Because we're not playing well, and any results we have had, we've just been downright lucky. So eventually, the players think that way. So if he carries on playing this same system, and pretty much with the same players, I mean, my goodness, he plays Manu and Ugarte every game and then takes them off pretty much after an hour, every single time. So he has to change, because he has to. There is no way.
By the way, Stevie. He was a midfielder for.
Well, he should know then. He should know that when you're asked to do the same thing over and over and it's not working, eventually you give up the ghost. Eventually your heart's not in it. And when your heart's not in it, you ain't going to win anything or get anywhere. So I don't think he has a choice. And if he doesn't change it, then guess what? Between now and the end of the season, we're going to see the same thing.
Jules, final say goes to you. Do you think he will change it?
I think he's very dogmatic. We knew that when he arrived. He clearly has his own style and philosophy, and this system that we've seen since day one, when we all wondered before he arrived, will he keep the 3-4-2-1 formation with the inside 10s, which is not an easy system to, well, it's not an easy system to play in. It's just, you need to find the right players, obviously. Not everybody can play as an inside 10, for example. Not everybody can play as a wing back in this kind of system and the way he wants them to play. So we knew that, and we did wonder a lot on the show, okay, who can fit in the system, because we knew it was very likely he would keep the same system. So we said, okay, where would Rashford fit? Well, nowhere. Garnacho, well, it might be tricky, and etc., etc. So we went through the whole squad. I remember on the show by saying, okay, who could fit in, who could not fit in. So we knew there was that system, and there was it. But I agree with the boys. I thought by now, Nathan always says something. He says there's style and substance for every football team in the whole world, whatever the level. So there's the style you want to play, okay, and then there's the result that you get or not get. And I think right now, for Ruben Amorim, as much as he probably wants his team to play the style of football he wants in this system, like he used to do at Sporting, right now he should care about the substance more than anything else and getting those points. Because remember, after the Boxing Day, he said, oh, we're in a relegation fight, which again was a bit like today, we are the worst team in Manchester United history. Again, that was the big headline he wanted. That was not true. They're not going to go down. But he was deflecting it that way, and tonight he's doing the same. But just do the basics. Try teaching them the basics, so at least they can start playing a little bit better, with more cohesion, more as a team than what we're seeing now. The third goal, we can blame Onana, of course we can. But before that, Brighton built from the back like they were playing against cones. Literally, the United players were cones on that pitch. And for Brighton, it was so easy to pass the ball and then the cross, and the mistake by Onana. Okay, so I'm not sure why he's teaching them, but certainly it's not working. And that's where I agree with the boys. He has to change some things.
And he's not been smart either, because he's backed himself into a corner. He's sitting saying, I'm not changing. This is how we do it. Sit a little bit like Postecoglou. He's like, we're not changing. This is how we play. And so he's backed himself into a corner by saying the same thing. We're not going to change.
Okay, Ale, if a coach tells the world that you are the worst team in the history of the club, will you feel motivated to return to training the next day? This is obviously Amorim and Manchester United.
Well, it's not helpful. I'm not asking you to lie to me. I know. We know that we're not very good. I know. We know that we're struggling. But I don't really need my manager to tell the world that, look, man, what I got going on over here, that's really not going to help us. It's the worst team in the history of the club. It doesn't fill me with a whole lot of confidence if I'm a player. And as a player, you have to sort of read in between the lines and see through the message and understand that this is just a narrative and that he's just deflecting and making headlines and pointing the direction somewhere else. But still, the message remains that we're terrible. I don't think we need more reaffirmation from the manager to remind you that you're terrible.
Stevie's shaking his head.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm shaking my head, because my last season at the Revs, we weren't good. We weren't good. And we're having bad result. And there was one particular reporter kept asking me, why don't you make changes? And I couldn't turn around and say, well, because the changes I would make would be even worse than we are without the changes. I couldn't, but you can't say that. For him to come out and say that, you just can't do it. I mean, I don't know what he thinks the reaction of the players is going to be, but you just can't say it.
All right.
The one person that cannot lose faith of the players that you have to rely upon to deliver for you is the manager. If the manager loses faith, then everything else falls apart, because this is the person that is making the decisions. And if he doesn't think that you're capable of doing the job, what does that say about the rest of the group? If, as a manager, and Stevie would know this as a former manager himself, that sometimes you have to package the message You have.
Sometimes you just got to lie.
Yes, you straight
Just
up
lie.
Yes, you have to misrepresent the truth. You have to repackage the message. You have to present a different reality.
Yeah.
You have to get the players buying into what you're selling, and you become a salesman of sorts. If you go on and tell the world that this is the worst Manchester United team in the history of the club, then how else are you going to sell the players on your ideas? It's very difficult to do.
If they don't believe anything that comes out of your mouth, you're done.
Yeah.
You've got to come up with something. Don't care whether it's stupid or not, but if you can get them to grasp it, when they go on the field, you've got to have something they can grasp onto, why they're there and what they're trying to do. Because without that, you're toast.